welcome to another one of the series of we're going through Jeff's new book, The New Leadership Landscape. Today's topic on chapter 2 is starting with why. So right here with the one and the only Jeff Sesol here, CEO and founder of Chute. Are you the only one? The only Jeff Sesol?
I am the only Jeff Sesol.
Well,
yeah.
I know I'm the only Drew Elgatian, so.
Yeah, no, Sesol spelled this way is very unique because it got changed after my grandfather came here from Croatia.
Oh.
And so there are only 5 in the U.S., and I think there's only 3 of us left alive.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So, well, cool. Well, it's an honor to be here with one of the only Sesols in the world. So starting with why. So can you tell me a little bit about what that really means?
Sure. I mean, it's more of an in-depth topic of your why in leadership. When you are a leader and you can share your why with people, they will buy into your leadership more. They will trust you more. But it's not just about your why that does it. It kind of goes a little deeper than that, and it's the emotional connection of that. And we can maybe talk about that a little later, but there's an emotional connection in your brain that is associated with the why. And so when you're trying to become a true leader, and we're redefining true leadership, one of the things you have to consider is your personal why. Not only why you're doing what you do, like for example, pull the Chute. Why are we doing what we do here, right? We're doing what we do here because our goal is that there's a huge gap in leadership in the world. And our goal is to change the world from that, to make it so that when people wake up in the morning, they don't look at themselves and go, oh crap, I gotta go to work. They wake up in the morning and they're actually maybe even excited about, hey, what's today gonna bring? Because I really enjoy where I work. We all have to work. Why can't we enjoy where we work? And so I think that's the important part of that. And so being able to create a why environment where we share our why, what we're about. Again, Pull the Chute is all about trying to get people to be better leaders. That's our goal. Helping people grow so they can help their company grow. Mm-hmm. That's all our whys. And then we all have personal whys. Mm-hmm. Like, why do I do what I do? Why do you do what you do? Mm-hmm. And that's kind of some of the things that are in the second chapter, because it's an important aspect. It's kind of like building your foundation before you actually kind of embark on leadership. You got to build that foundation of the why and go from there.
That's such a great point, especially because I know something that you've talked about with me too is just saying, every morning, what's the goal, right? And that just frames the whole day. What is the goal of the day? And honestly, I say that to myself every time I have a conversation with someone. Okay, what's the goal of this conversation? Right. Is it to get to know Jeff more? Is it to be a better friend to him? Is it to help him and serve him? Right? And I like what you talked about with, we all have to work. Well, that's true, but if we're passionate about what we do, we'll never work a day in our lives, right?
Yeah.
Right?
And, absolutely.
And that's exactly why we do what we do, is because we're so much more than just pull the Chute, right?
Right.
It is for the better overall, community, world
absolutely
impact.
Yeah, I mean, we're in this place. I mean, COVID really caused a lot of problems. I mean, what's up in stats, right? So depression's up, suicides are up, all these things, and those are all tied to the fact of work. People get stressed out. The anxiety levels are way higher than they've ever been in life, right? And that's because everyone's expecting more. They feel like they're being pushed more without being appreciated more. And there's all those factors that go into it. And I just think if we can get people to understand the why as leaders and as ourselves, then it's going to make it easier for people to follow you as the leader and understand where you're going.
I think, again, with having a why, where you're going, right? You know what's at the end of the journey, or even step by step. There was actually a study done, it was fairly recently, but what they did was they took rats and they put them in water to see how long they could tread water. And I believe it was 15 minutes. I think they lasted 15 minutes before they died. Then they did another group where they took after 5 minutes, they took the rats out and they put them back in. How long do you think those rats lasted?
Probably twice as long, I'm guessing, because they knew
90 hours.
90 hours.
They lasted 90 hours in the water because they knew something good was to come.
Right.
They knew that there was hope.
Yeah.
Right. And if you have that why, you know that. So
absolutely,
it's very interesting. You think about it, not 90 minutes, 90 hours.
90
when
hours.
The first group only lasted 15 minutes.
Wow.
Pretty insane, right?
Yeah, that is insane. I love it.
So, give me an example of maybe someone, bigger name that is a good portrays, starting with why.
Well, sure, I can do that. Herb Kelleher from Southwest Airlines is probably the best known of why. He started Southwest Airlines, and his whole why was to give a better environment for employees to work. Because he felt that if you gave the employees a better environment, that they would treat the customers better. And then the customers would enjoy the whole thing. He encouraged people to be themselves, to not follow a corporate format of, no, you can't do that. That's not something we do. If you ever get on a Southwest flight and they're having fun, they're joking, hey, if you don't put that life jacket on next to you, then when we crash, then you're the one that's going to be without it. Things like that. It was they just had a blast with all that stuff, and that built this whole thing. But it was his why was all about his employees. He put his employees first. It was kind of a purpose-driven leadership. Purpose-driven leadership really says it's not about you, it's about your employees. And so that was how he built Southwest Airlines, was that he made it all about his employees. And the funny part was there was many other companies that tried to mimic that, but they didn't have the why. They were just trying to mimic, certain, offering fun stuff and doing like that, but they didn't make it about their employees. It wasn't about the employees. So that became a struggle where they almost all failed, other than Southwest Airlines. And they even kept that as they started to grow and expand. They even kept those core values in place, even though they just became this huge conglomerate. It's an amazing story. I think it's really good. But the interesting part about why, and I just want to make sure that we all understand this, why actually goes to the emotional part of our brain. Because what happens is, when we're told things, you can be the best speaker and you walk in and you can say something, people are like, oh yeah, okay. But if you can connect with people on an emotional level, then all of a sudden you got both the logic and the emotion working together. That is why why, quote unquote, is so powerful. Because there's the limbic part of our brain, right, which analyzes emotions, can't analyze language at all, but it analyzes emotions. So did you ever meet someone and you're like, God, I really like them? Can't tell you why, right? There's something about them I really like, because they attach themselves to the limbic part of your brain that created an emotion. Sometimes emotions are hard to put into words, but when you can connect the logic of the language part of your brain with the emotional side of your brain, then you got something. And that's what why does, is it connects those two parts of your brain. When we get those two parts connected, that whole trust as a leadership is impacted incredibly. We talked last time about trust, right? It's just amazing how much trust is just infused into that leadership role, because all of a sudden they not only hear what the person's saying, but they feel what the person's saying, and that makes a huge difference.
Yeah, because reality is listening is feeling. You don't just hear the words. You need to listen to the words, and listening is feeling those words.
Right. And
to what you're saying about, you ever had that experience where you meet someone and you're like, I don't know why, I just felt connected.
Yeah.
And I really liked them, I think of when I met you, I was like, man, why do I like this guy? And then I realized it's the hat. Yeah, and then whenever you don't wear the hat, I'm like, who is this guy?
Who is this guy?
Yeah.
I know.
So yeah, I love that. And so the other thing is, like, we're relational beings. We're meant to be in relationship. And if we don't connect on that relationship level, there's no trust. Right.
And think of things, you go buy a car.
Yeah.
All right. And usually you buy a car because it feels right.
Yeah.
Not because logically it made sense.
Yeah.
Right? How many cars you get in, all of a sudden you go, yes.
Yeah.
This is the one, right? That's the limbic part of your brain, and the emotional side of your brain going, yes, this feels comfortable. This feels right. And that's that gut feeling that we get sometimes.
Yeah.
That's where that comes from.
Yeah. No, totally that. If I feel when I get in a truck, something like that, I'm like, I feel like a man.
Yeah. Ooh, yeah.
Yeah, right. So how would you say that having a why really affects your culture within the team and motivation and effectiveness within a team in a business, or I mean even within a family too? It's very applicable.
And I want to be real clear too. It's not just having a why; it's being able to express that why. Okay, clear and concise.
Yeah.
So that's the key. So what I would encourage people is, as you're trying to figure out your why, be real clear about what it is. And when you can be clear about that, so what happens is, think about employees that don't really understand the whole plight of the business, right? It's just a job. It's a menial job. They're just doing it, right? They're not invested in it at all. When something breaks, they're just like, hey, this broke, instead of trying to look at it and say, well, if I just kind of turn this and do something, I can get it fixed and we can get back online and do things, or whatever, it's those kind of things. When they understand the why, the purpose, the strategy, where we're trying to take the company, as you guys do when we're talking about Pull the Chute, we know exactly where we're going. That's the why. And so we're all impacted by that, and we all go the extra mile to make sure that we not only are a successful business, but that we take care of our clients as well in ways that we probably, normal people wouldn't. We go the extra mile with that stuff. And I think that's some of the things that impacts when you have your why and you understand the why and you're able to connect with that why and tell that whole story. And that's the key, right? I mean, I tell you guys stories all the time about where I want to take this company and what we want to do, right? That's my vision, but that's my story as well. And so that's the part of the emotional side, because you hear me get emotional about that stuff, because I just feel like there's such a need for this, and it just impacts me a lot to be able to impact others a lot. And that's the why part with the emotion, and it really makes everyone just go the extra mile when they normally wouldn't.
Yeah, I think it's so important too when you're coming up with a why. Like for instance, when we started with you, you had a why in your head, but it took all of us together to really break down that why and really kind of come up with the very specifics of that why and how to get there.
Right.
And I mean, and that's not just applicable again with just work and teams and stuff like that. It's applicable in family. Talk with my wife. It's like, okay, what is the goal that we want? And another thing I'll elaborate on is when people set goals all the time. Well, I want to lose weight, or I want to start working out again. Okay, well, if you just set a broad goal, the odds are you're not going to get it.
Right.
You got to be specific. Well, I want to lose weight, so I'm going to go to the gym. Okay, how many times are you going to go to the gym? Okay, I'm going to go to the gym 3 times a week. Okay, what time are you going to go to the gym? It's breaking it down further and further and further. And that's kind of like what we talked about last week with first principle thinking too, is really just breaking it down. And so it's not just important to have, this overarching why, but it's really important to get different perspectives and work together and really break down that to the very specifics. And that's what, another thing that we're doing with the groups too, is getting all sorts of different perspectives together so I can help, you break down your why, and you can help me break down my why, and really kind of figure out so those things can actually be achievable and not just some, pipe dream.
Absolutely. And I think that's the power of groups, right? When we get together with groups with our peers, we create a safe environment where people feel comfortable being able to share and things of that nature. So I think that's what's going to make a difference in the groups. And then you get this, not only do you get to share, but you get support, which is really a great thing, which is you just described. So
I know you've had a lot of businesses in the past, and y'all might not know that, but how many businesses have you owned and started, I guess?
5.
5?
Yeah.
Wow. And so give me an example from maybe past experience yourself when starting with why.
Sure, I probably could do 2. One was I had a little company called Physicool, and it was a cooling compression bandage that worked differently. Instead of like an ice bag puts cold into when you injure your elbow, it starts to swell up. It's inflamed, right? You put ice on it to stop the swelling. Well, all that is the blood all rushing into there to try and solve and fix the problem, right?
Yeah.
Which causes a swelling. Well, what these cooling compression bands do is, instead of putting cold in to compress the veins and stop the blood from going there, what these did is it actually took the heat out that was expanding everything and allowed the blood to flow, and you could heal 2 times faster, right? Okay, so our why for this was, look, we want to be able to help athletes or just people that get hurt to recover faster.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of those things. As you get older, your hands start to hurt more. So to be able to wrap them in this physical wrap was amazing. If you're an athlete, they'd come out with ice bags on their knees and on their shoulders. My daughter played volleyball. She'd come out with ice bags on both knees and on her swinging shoulder all the time, right? And I don't know how healthy that was. I mean, it just, it compressed the blood. So we need blood to heal. And if we're stopping the blood flow because we're compressing the veins that go there, then are we really helping? I don't know. I mean, that was my thought. I didn't enjoy that part of it. And so that's why I found it an alternative.
Yeah, and I'd say it goes right back to first principle thinking too.
It does, right? Absolutely. Yeah. And so that was our why, was to try and get people to understand that we want them to be able to heal faster. And we sold it into, like, think about every Major League Baseball and football and hockey and soccer, NCAA colleges all over the place. And then we finally sold it into the military, and they loved it. They absolutely loved it. For every time we'd send it into them, they thought it was amazing, and they used it for a lot of different things. A lot of times they just used it to cool down their soldiers because it was a cooling wrap, right? So sometimes that happened as well. But that was our whole goal, was to kind of change their thinking as to how to heal people faster. So.
And then what was the other?
Oh, the other one, I forgot. I had 2. That's right. A free drive would be the other one too. I bring that up. Where we, again, first principle thinking, but we also, our why was to change the way that people store their files. And so instead of storing them on a disk or on a little drive, they were actually able to put them up on the internet and get to it from anywhere else. They could go travel somewhere and get to their files from anywhere. And so we just changed that. But our why was to change the way people go about storing and sharing files. And that was the why. And
I know from that story, that really developed because you saw a particular thing of your company that was being used the most, right? And then you're thinking to yourself, why are these people using this so much?
Yeah,
and then you piece it together. You're like, hey.
Yeah, it's great. And the cool part too is that our culture was all about why.
Yeah.
At Free Drive we shared why we were going after this, what the purpose was. It was all about our why in that, and why we gave all the employees this ability to be themselves, to think out of the box. We gave them a room where they had overstuffed couches and chairs and video games and movies and stuff, because we wanted them to feel like they could take a break.
Yeah.
It wasn't just put your nose to the grindstone and get it done. It was like, there are times when we just have to step away. And that was part of our why, was to build this culture that gave them that ability to feel comfortable in there, which again leads to the story of some people never leaving. They would stay for days on end because they felt comfortable enough that they could just go sleep there, wake up, and just keep working. But we built this whole culture of why.
And I think you kind of touched on it a little bit too, but it's just, there's so much important in communicating your why to people. Absolutely. Because your why to have the comfortable overstuffed couches, just fun stuff to do, wasn't to like, bribe the people and entice them to come in. It was, hey, these people need time to relax. These are real people. We want them to feel comfortable. We want them to feel at home. Right. And that was your why. And people knew that, I'm sure, in your company.
Oh, absolutely.
And everyone knew what the why was for why you were doing what you were doing, right? Why they were doing what they were doing. Why each individual job was doing that individual job too.
Well, you just said something that's interesting too that I want to make sure everyone understands. Your why is not about how you're leading. It is, but it's also about why are you personally doing what you're doing. And that's something that you have to discover. You have to discover, like, if you want to be a leader, you got to look into yourself and say, what's my why? Why do I want to do this, and where do I want to get with it, and all those, because that's going to help drive you to be a better leader as well.
Yeah, and I think, as a man of faith, I think that, we are all on a specific journey. God has us on this journey, and our whys sometimes can change because, I think the other really important thing is always to look back and say, okay, why did I go through whatever I just went through? Whether it was a struggle, whether it was some great blessing and some success or something like that. But I think it's so important to not only look at, your purpose, their why going forward, but also, okay, why did that happen, and how can I use that to help the next people?
Well,
right?
and that's an important fact. You just said, how can I help? Why did I go through it, and how can I help others? What did I learn from it, and how can I learn to move forward, and how can I help others? A lot of people go through things and they say, why did I go through that? And they get depressed about it. Use those situations as learning situations to make yourself better and to make others better. You know, it's why we do what we do with our coaching right now and our leadership coaching, because we've gone through so much. You know, I got 30 plus years experience of going through, 5 companies, consulting, just so many different things. I've learned so much that I take all those instances of why did that happen, and I use that to make sure I don't make those mistakes again, or if they were good things, I leverage those good things, but I help others to not make those mistakes as well.
I think back to, I think it was your first company, the painting company, right? And you had that company, and then if I remember correctly, you handed it off to your partner, and then it was
my foreman,
your foreman, and it was a very, it was a very successful company. And then when you handed it off, shortly after it failed, I want to say it was like 6 months.
6 months, yeah.
6 months it failed. And you look back at that now, and you realize probably pretty quickly why that failed. And if that didn't happen, you could have been in Free Drive, right, or something like that, some bigger company that you had, and that could have failed, and it could have caused that failure. But you had that smaller one to look back and
I realized that I didn't give him the time he needed to be successful, and that was the big mistake. I just handed it off and then walked away, and that was shame on me.
I mean, there's a blessing also that you went through that.
A learning,
and then you learned now in that way you can teach other businesses that may have thousands of employees, or
absolutely,
hundreds of thousands of employees even. So how do you really how do you help us? How would you say to help me or the viewers to really identify that why? What are some tools that you use to help identify that? Because that's a really big thing, right? And again, it's a process, but really figuring out your why, or say purpose per se, can be difficult.
Well, the best example I can give you is pull the chute. It was a self-reflection time. It was during COVID. I was turning 60, and I decided that I wanted to do something different that really impacted things. And so that's the first part of it, right? So where do you want to go? What do you want to do? And so what I said to myself was, okay, what's your goal? And I said, well, my goal is hopefully to leave a legacy that impacted people. I want people to say, that was amazing for me. And so then the question was, all right, what are you passionate about? Which it always should tie into your why. What are you passionate about? And so for me, I was passionate about helping people grow and be the best they could be. And so my why became very clear that it was, okay, for me and to do that, how do I go about doing that? And then I said, okay, by coaching, because I can impact more people by coaching than consulting. Consulting is usually one-to-one from a company to a person. Coaching is one to many people. And so I just felt like that would be more impactful and allow me to change the way that we go about things, this whole leadership issue, the whole leadership gap that's coming up, quicker and be more efficient in it as well. And so the goal there my why became to touch as many people as possible and help as many people as possible grow and be the best they could be. And so that's because my passion was to help people. And so those two kind of tied together. And again, the language and the words, the feelings kind of tied together for those two things, and it made all the sense in the world for me. So my encouragement to you is, figure out what you're passionate about. Figure out what you'd like to do, what makes you excited when you wake up in the morning, and tie those two things together. And that really can help you figure out your internal why.
And I'll add on to that is I think a really good thing to do is to talk to the people you're closest with, right? Talk to your family, maybe your spouse, coworkers,
people you
your
trust,
friends, people you trust, and be like, hey, what do you see in me what do you see that I'm passionate about? Because
Right.
that can be very difficult, especially
It can be.
from as the younger folk, maybe just graduating college or even just graduating high school. It's hard, but I think the thing to remember is it's always a journey.
Yes.
It's not, you don't have to have everything figured out right at one. We always tell people, we don't know everything. We don't have all the answers, but we coming together, we can figure out
That's right.
things, right?
Yeah.
And I think the other important thing is, you're saying like you want to serve people, right? And you kind of really broke that down. And a lot of people, you ask them, why do you do what you do? Well, we want to serve the community. Well, that's great, and I think that's 99% of people's real passion. But it's so important to break that down more and more and more, so you can really expound on your skills that you have and your team skills or your family skills, whatever. But and what you're saying, like our goal really at Pull the Chute is to develop leaders that develop leaders.
That's right.
Right. And so, how do we have the best impact? It's not bringing, developing one person, so then,
right.
and then that way we can teach everyone, it's teaching people to be able to teach people, right?
Yeah. Ripple effect, right?
Yeah.
Effect.
And so it's just like, how can we have the biggest impact? Well, the biggest impact we can have is to train people that can train people.
That's right.
That can train people, because we're going to train people that are going to know way more than us, or be greater leaders. And the other thing I always, a lot of people think, leaders, they a lot of people don't know the definition of being what a leader really is. I mean, but you got to think, you're leading yourself every day. You're leading your family every day. It's not just a position of power, and sometimes leadership can have that kind of connotation where it's like, oh, it's only someone that's like in management or authority. It's like, no, you're have a leadership impact everywhere you go and everything you do. Right?
Yeah, especially with your peers. I mean, working side by side, with your peers, being able to lift them up is being a leader.
Yes.
Even though you're at the same level.
Yeah.
So
That's good. So how can having a why really differentiate yourself, say from a business aspect, from your competition? So, because I think you have a good vision on seeing those companies that have have started with why, and those that don't.
Yeah, it really goes back to, it's a proven fact that people that enjoy their job, the companies are going to grow because they're going to have part of it, and that's the whole key. We want the leaders not to have to figure everything out, not to have all the answers, but to be able to empower the others, to be able to be part of some of the solutions and part of some of the growth of the company. And we can't do it alone. So if we remember, one simple fact, it's not about you, it's about your people. And then if we empower them, encourage them, appreciate them, and through your why, it's going to give them that emotional attachment. The goal for you as a leader is to get people to trust you and believe in you. And we talked a little bit, at times we've talked about, in our groups, we've talked about the ability to, if you're going to do something for someone, do it. If you say you're going to do something, then do it, because that builds trust. And if you don't do it, then that builds distrust, right? People don't buy into it. So there's all those factors that go into it. And so if you understand what your why is, and you stay true to who you are and your why, and every decision that you make is part of, does this fit into my why? Why am I going to be a leader? Well, I want to be able to do, impact people. I want to be able to help people grow. I want them to be the best they can be. So if everything that we make a decision for falls into that why, then we can't go wrong with our decisions. Right, when we're making decisions, and that's the goal. For companies, they have set up mission statements and they set value statements, and then they probably put them in a drawer somewhere, and they're never, they might see them on the wall once in a while. But if they live by those decisions they make as a company, because those should have been built based on your why as a company, then decisions that you have to make, as long as they fall within those parameters, are the right decisions. When the line gets gray and you start making up excuses to be outside the line, then that's where you're going to run into problems. And so all of that feeds into, ultimately, what's the why of the company, what's the why of the leadership, what's the why of the people, and you go from there.
And so what would you say is you really touched on the fact of the positive effect of starting with why, what happens when you don't start with why? You know.
Well, my personal opinion is that you're going to flounder. I mean, you're not. If we don't know where we're going, you know, it's like, you know, you throw a stone and hit something, and we say, okay, we hit something, right?
Yeah.
No, that's not where we're going. You know, we want to hit the bullseye here.
Yeah.
And so, for us to do that, we need to understand what the why is. If we're not willing to figure out what our why is and what the company's why is, then it might be a great idea, but with no focus. So, you know, you're basically a boat at sea with no rudder.
Yeah.
And you're all over the place. You know, there's all these different analogies I can give you, but that's the problem.
Yeah.
And so I encourage everyone to really figure that out, because that's going to make a difference. It's going to impact not only you as a person, but your business and your employees.
Yeah, it really gives you direction on, you know, not only where you're going, say in a business, but also personally. Right. If you don't, maybe you can, because I mean, you grew up with maps, but if I said I was going to drive to California and without my phone or GPS, I would not be able to get there. I mean, I might head in the right direction. I might begin with heading west, but I would not be able to get there.
Yeah.
So it's so important to have direction, right? And to have that kind of map. And that why really helps you kind of lay that foundation and kind of figure out where you're going, why you want to get there, and then along that journey of that, you continue to break it down, right?
Yep, absolutely.
And again, I'll reiterate the importance of having other people to bounce that off of.
Absolutely.
And remember, we're relational beings, right? We're meant to be in community. We're meant to be in relationship. And so if you're just kind of trying to process this all by yourself, you're not going to really be able to hammer it out all. So it's always really important.
Absolutely.
And I mean, I would say that you would agree to that with when we came on, and you're like, wow, you know, like you had a really good picture, but like then it just came so much more refined, and it's continuing to get more refined and refined.
We can't work in a bubble.
Yeah. Well, this has been a great talk. Thank you for everyone joining us. I would ask, you know, put your why in the comments, and if you really enjoyed this, you know, like us, follow us on Facebook. Also, you know, I'll give you a call to action would be to share this with someone. You know, there might be someone in your family that really needs to hear this, or you might feel called to share this with, you know, someone at work or your manager or whoever. Please do so. That can really impact their lives. And again, comment, reach out to us. You can find us on pullthechute.net. And if you have any questions, we'd love to set up a call with anyone and maybe help them figure out their why. Thanks again, Jeff, for having me here.
Appreciate it.
And we'll see you guys next week.